But now, Raheem, through your reporting and Natalie Winters, it's coming up that a whole raft of companies and some of the people we know took this money, which is, to me, pretty absurd. But more importantly, there were actually Chinese technology companies and really a Chinese defense company. And worst of all, the H&A's, one of the H&A subsidiaries, which H&A is one of the biggest influence peddlers and money launderers in the world. So I want to turn back over to you and then get Natalie on here. I want to talk about where taxpayer money, people at home watching this show, listening to the show, that don't have any savings, their stock portfolio is all messed up, their real estate value in their house is down, they don't know where their next paycheck's coming, but they see trillions of dollars in federal spending, and somehow it's going to Chinese companies. How does that work?
Yeah, we'll bring in Natalie here. Natalie Winters is one of our senior reporters at the National Pulse, really one of the first people to come on board, and has really done a fantastic job, as you say, Steve, becoming one of the pivotal points for what the CCP is doing here in Washington, D.C. and beyond, in terms of the think tank scene, in terms of the FARA, foreign agent registrations, the foreign media stuff, the digital army, the Wu Mao, all of that stuff, which we've covered there. Natalie, welcome. I know we've been trying to get you on the program for some time. We're glad we can have you finally on the show. Walk us through this, because it's a stunning story about where these PPP loans went. Obviously, we know there are some U.S. organizations who have received these who you wouldn't necessarily think should have been taking money from the Ayn Rand Institute and so on and so forth. But also, very egregiously, we found evidence of, I think it was 6 or 7 different firms linked to the Chinese Communist Party, which have been taking these PPP loans. Just walk us through exactly what you found, Natalie.
Sure. Well, it's no secret that there's a sort of axis of evil between the Chinese Communist Party, American corporates, and our political establishment. And they've exploited this PPP loan program as a continuation of their legacy of selling out American workers. For instance, Chinatex, which is a state-owned enterprise operating out of Beijing, which on their homepage boasts of being subject to approval by the State Council and is subservient to the Chinese Communist Party's 5-year plans, they received between $150,000 to $350,000 of federal government subsidies. The China Manufacturers Alliance, whose sole purpose is to unite American corporates and China-based manufacturers of automotive parts like tires, they also received up to $1 million from this PPP program. And if you dig deeper into this company, their board members are almost exclusively CCP members, even advisors to the Belt and Road Initiative. And there's CCP entities getting money from this PPP program across a variety of sectors, really a testament to the entrenchment of the CCP within the American economy. For example, the China Institute, which operates out of New York, operates a network of 9 K-12 Confucius Institutes, which are entirely bankrolled by the CCP. They operate falsely as language and culture initiatives. In reality, let's call them what they are. They're propaganda fronts. And I don't just say that because the resources that they push teachers to use are written by CCP committees identified by the U.S. government as seeking to neutralize opposition to the CCP and mobilize advocates on behalf of the CCP, but because the FBI and DOJ use similar terminology when describing such companies. You also have China United Transport, who collaborates with Air China, China Eastern Airlines, China Southern Airlines, either state-owned enterprises or the Chinese government retains a majority stake in these companies, along with Costco Shipping, which is a sea-based transportation company that, again, has CCP members on their board, or even China Luxury Alliance, who's a partner with Alibaba and Tencent, which are CCP-owned companies that our government has identified as lacking no real ability to say no to the CCP and giving them backdoor access to American data.
So, Raheem, hang on for a second, Natalie.
Go ahead,
Raheem,
Steve.
Raheem, you got to help me out here. How did Natalie Winters, how are the American taxpayers, let's get this down very simply, how, and they're agreeing to use as a bridge this program to make sure people didn't get laid off. Who in the Treasury Department, how did this happen? That what Natalie Winters just went through is a litany of companies that have direct Chinese Communist Party control. How do we end up bailing out these companies on a pandemic that the Chinese Communist Party started? How did that happen?
Well, I think what you're seeing here.
Go ahead, Natalie.
China has essentially created an ecosystem in the United States where there really is no feedback loop for them to be held accountable, right? They have foreign propaganda operations operating in Washington, D.C. that can spin stories. There's revolving doors between establishment media outlets and China Global Television Network. And even there's former Obama and Bush administration officials who are now lobbying for companies like Huawei and ZTE. And even former DNC executives are doing the same thing. It's what the establishment does. They've been complicit in China's rise. They've helped fund it, and they've profited immensely from it. And now they're profiting again from this PPP program. Again, these are organizations like the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations, who, if you look through their board members, it's really just a who's who of who's outsourced jobs, who've put American workers last for decades, and have allowed the Chinese Communist Party to rise. So there's no real enforcement mechanism or really no threat that the Chinese Communist Party is going to be held accountable because establishment media outlets will not report on this.
Real quickly, Natalie, what do you think the solution is here? Do you think all that ought to be carved back? Is your recommendation all of that ought to be carved back to the U.S. Treasury?
Well, my recommendation is a complete divestment from the CCP. We certainly don't need to be collaborating and funding state-owned enterprises. So yeah, we should take that money back. That'd be America first. We should do that. It'd be easy enough. And we don't need to be funding a regime that represses Uyghurs and that treats Hong Kong protesters horribly. We shouldn't be funding that.